Okay, now in this video we will discuss about service sector. Okay, we'll discuss about the service sector. In both India and Pakistan, the service sector is emerging as a major player of development. So both the countries in India and Pakistan, both these two countries has emerged as a major service sector for their development. Okay, in both these countries, service sector accounted for more than 50% of GDP in 2003. So both these countries, both India and Pakistan, what we see in 2003, out of the total GDP, the contribution of service sector, that means the tertiary sector, is more than 50%. Both these two countries, India and Pakistan, the service sector contributed more than 50% of total GDP. That means the out of the total income, more than 50% income comes from service sectors, and is emerging as a prospective employer also. Why? Because we get some prospective employer from both these countries. The contribution of China to the GDP was 32%. So what we see, the same thing what we see in China, we see that the contribution of service sector in China is only 32%. The China's contribution of service sector is 32%. In 1980, Pakistan was faster in shifting its workforce to service sector than India and China. So what we see in 1980s, Pakistan was shifting its work fast. In 1980, Pakistan was faster in shifting their workforce from agriculture to service sector compared to India and China. What we see, when we see it in 1980s. In 1980s, Pakistan was faster in shifting their workforce from agriculture to service sector compared to India and China. In the 1980s, India and China and Pakistan employed 17%, 12%, 23% of its workforce in the service sector respectively. So in 1980s, if you see the schedule in the previous page, if you see the schedule, then you get it. But as I discussed the year 2000, as it is an old book, so let's discuss about 1980. So in 1980, India, China and Pakistan, India, China and Pakistan, these three countries involved 17%, 12% and 27% of their workforce in service sector. And when we comes to 2000, and this is the scenario of 19. This is the scenario of 1980. When it comes to 2000, this scenario changed, and what we see, 24% of the workforce of India, 24% workforce of India involved in service sector, 19% workforce of China involved in service sectors, and 33% of workforce involved in service sectors. Okay, and now let's the last is conclusion. In the last 2 decades, the growth of agriculture sector, which employed the largest proportion of workforce in all three countries. In the previous decades, what we see, all these three countries, in the previous decades, what we see, most of the peoples are employed in agriculture, and basically we see that the growth of agriculture we have seen in these three countries, India, Pakistan and China. Okay, that is why it is written here that the growth of agriculture sector, which employs the largest proportion of workforce. So that means in the previous decades of these three countries, what you see, the largest proportion of peoples were depend on agriculture, because agriculture have shown some to some extent of growth. All these three countries. Okay, and this growth has declined also, After that, this growth of agriculture has declined also. In the industrial sector, China has maintained a double-digit growth rate, whereas India and Pakistan growth rate has declined. So, what is said here that China has showed double digit growth. That means more than 10% of growth they have showed in manufacturing sector, whereas India's growth, Pakistan's growth in manufacturing sector has declined in the consecutive years. In case of service sector, India has been able to raise its rate of growth in the 1990s, while China and Pakistan reduced their service sector growth. So the good sign what we see in our country is in the year of 1990. After the year of 1990s, India have showed a positive growth. India have showed a positive growth means the growth of service sector has increased in the year of after the year of 1990s. The same thing is the same thing. That means in case of service sector, China and Pakistan's growth in service sector has declined. Okay, that means India has shown a positive things in service sectors after 1990s. So China's growth is mainly contributed by manufacturing sector and India's growth by service sector. So two things we have understood from this conclusion, that China have shown their growth. China have shown their growth in manufacturing sector, whereas India have shown their rising growth in service sector. Okay, in in the comparison in our in this after discussing these three sectors, agriculture, industry and service sectors, service sectors, in our conclusion we can say that China have maintained their positive growth, their rising growth in manufacturing sector, and India have shown their rising growth, positive growth in service sector. And during this period, Pakistan have shown deceleration in all these three sectors. And in these three sectors, that means after 1990s, Pakistan have shown a deceleration of growth in all these three sectors. Okay, in our next video we will discuss about the human development indicators.